Hi everybody, thank you for being here, thank you for asking me. It's nice to be back, I don't get here enough. Ty, that was great. I never liked to follow you at all, that was really great. And I agree, sliders are tiny ass hamburgers. Barry, thank you for the shout out, it was great to see you tell a story up here. And Ellen, you're so expressive, I love to hear you tell stories, and you got me thinking about masturbation again. The first time I had a panic attack was here at Story Salon. It was at the old location, the Coffee Fix. I was stuck in a middle row, right up against the wall, where it's really kind of awkward and disruptive to get up and walk out. It was during the last storyteller. There was only maybe 5 minutes left. Surely I could wait. But I couldn't. I had to get up. Apologizing profusely, quietly, I walked back to the bathroom, tried to catch my breath, wipe off the sweat. I didn't know what was happening to me. I came out, the show was over, people were talking, laughing, congratulating each other. I told a few people what happened, and they said, oh yeah, panic attack. Like it was nothing. Like it was something everybody goes through. They cared about me, but they thought I was fine. They were casual, while I was, well, panicking. I admit for that much of my life, I was on the fence about whether or not to believe in things like panic attacks, anxiety, depression, ADHD. Hearing about the symptoms didn't make sense to me. How can people be like that? Just concentrate, meditate, focus, figure it out, snap out of it. Then 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with adult ADHD. Everybody know what that is? Attention, okay. And it was determined that I probably suffered from it for decades. And you're about to see what ADHD looks like in my head, in action, right now, in its full glory. Are you ready? Hang on to your seats. This is the story of the aftermath of that first panic attack and how Mary Beth, Roger, Yuri, and Scotty changed my life. And 3 of them had to die to do it. When I worked in the corporate world in Timeshare as a group presenter, I had 12 different bosses over 7 years. I made money, but I was unhappy. I talked about it here. That's where I met Mary Beth. She was a saint, motherly, kind, warm. She used to hug you like your mom and mean it. Everybody liked her. Everybody. Then she got cancer and died. Her memorial service was at the resort where we work, on the golf course, 2 minutes away from the building where I last saw her. Out of 100 people who were supposed to be there, 4 showed up. 4. Me and 3 others. Next day people said they had things to do, doctor's appointments, kids to pick up from school, or they forgot about it. My favorite? I don't like funerals. Oh, because everybody else does. I was so angry that I went home and told Carrie, if I die, don't buy a lot of food because only 4 people from my work might show up. It completely soured my view of the people that I worked with. Nobody cared. Everybody lies. Timeshare. People looking over my shoulder telling me how to do my job better, making suggestions about how to speak to people and communicate and connect and bring emotion and things that I already knew how to do, but because they sold timeshares, they knew how to do it better. I pretended to respect their opinions, made changes when I had to, and was miserable. And then I met Roger, and he taught me that I didn't have to do anything that they told me to do, that I could do everything that I wanted to do and it would be fine because nobody would care, nobody would know, and he proved it to me. How did he prove it? By dying. By getting his body wedged between the glass dome and the camera that my bosses assured me was being used to monitor all my presentations. That's right, one day I looked up and I looked at that camera and between the lens and the dome was a dead mouse. It somehow crawled into the dome and could never get out. I named him Roger. And when he continued to rot there for weeks, I realized that once that door closed, I could take their corporate script that they wanted me to deliver and do anything I wanted. And I did. And I was free. And I did it very well. I was happier for a moment. Until bosses 11 and 12 decided in their infinite wisdom that a group presentation with live human beings was outdated. So they created a virtual iPad presentation that every sales agent could carry with them separately. And they got rid of the entire group presentation department, of which there was only 2 of us. And despite an exceptional sales record that was actually better than the iPad agents, I was out of a job that I hated but needed. For the next 3 months, I tried my hand at being an actual sales agent with an iPad under my arm, and sitting in the lounge one day looking at a TV screen where your name is on a list determined by how well you're doing that month, and your name rises as people come in and you're assigned a tour, while most agents are eagerly awaiting their turn at the top to go out and make money. I suddenly had my second panic attack. The difference was, unlike the first time where I was surrounded by people I liked, even though they were casual about what I was experiencing, now I was surrounded by people who wouldn't even go to my funeral. And I thought I was dying. In my mind, there was no other option. I got up, walked out of the building, got into my car, and drove home to Hollywood. No consultation with doctors, no medication, no reading books. I just attempted to concentrate, focus, meditate, figure it out, snap out of it. And a few days later, I went back to work. And then Yuri came up to me one day and said, "What's wrong with you? You look bad, unhappy, depressed." I said, "I think I am." He said, "You need a break." And then he taught me how to do it. Apparently everybody does it. Not just in this industry, but everywhere. You go to the doctor, say you have anxiety or depression, you need a break. The doctor will write you a note for 30 days. You get disability money so you're not broke. And when you feel better, you go back to work. There were people doing it 3 or 4 times a year. I had no idea. He taught me what to do, what to say, how to say it. I was so happy that I promised him that as soon as I get a disability check, I would buy him a steak dinner. He said, "I'm going to hold you to that." So I made an appointment. Doctor comes in, she asks me what's wrong. I take a deep breath, ready to deliver my lines, and instead of saying the lines I had prepared, I burst into tears. For real. She wrote me a note, and she made me promise to see a therapist. Driving home, I had mixed emotions. I was happy that I had a month's vacation with pay, but terrified about what just happened. I didn't want to deal with it, so I didn't. And 30 days later, on Yuri's advice, I called the doctor and asked her for a little bit more time, and she said no. I said, "Why?" She said, "Because you promised to see a therapist and you haven't. Make an appointment and I'll consider it." Crap, she's not an idiot. She called my bluff. I had to deliver. But as long as I had to do it, I wasn't going to just see any old therapist, so I did the research. I went online and looked at reviews, tried to find videos. Apparently, it's very easy to call yourself a therapist these days, despite not having the qualifications I would deem necessary for the job. Fortunately, I found a winner. In fact, I thought she was overqualified for me. She worked with combat soldiers suffering from PTSD and trauma centers. She was smart. And part of me said, that's what I want. Even though another part of me said, go for the stupidest one you can find. Fortunately, my better judgment prevailed. In my first meeting with her, she asked me why I was there, and despite having prepared lines, guess what happened? Again, I burst into tears. It was all real. It's real. She sent me to a psychiatrist to get medication. I had deep depression, anxiety, PTSD, but I desperately did not want to take pills. I tried. I didn't like it. It dulled me, made me less creative. So together we worked without medication. It's been 4.5 years. I think I'm doing better, despite the crazy ADHD structure of this story. I quit the timeshare industry in the beginning of 2018. At the end of 2018, I thought I was ready to do a one-man show in San Diego, one night only. It was called An Evening of Bad Ideas. And it was. Despite people telling me that it was very good and brave and interesting and different, and the audience was filled with people that I knew and loved and who cared about me, I didn't prepare for it. What's worse, I did it on purpose. It was an experiment to see how much I could accomplish by just winging it. You see, somewhere in my brain, I decided that I needed a baseline comparison between my natural talent and the necessary work. I needed to see where failure occurred for me. The show started, I opened my mouth, and 3 hours later, 3 hours later, I stopped talking. It was an evening of bad ideas. In the months that followed, it was then determined that I suffered from adult ADHD. and probably had for many, many years. And it would be best to channel my attention into making some money. After all, I was out of work. I did an occasional magic show here and there, consulting on movie scripts here and there. I hosted some variety shows at a casino. But what I really wanted to do was take all of my strategies for doing what I always did so successfully and put them into a business venture. I was going to show people how to stand up in front of a group of people and be able to own the room, make a sale, inspire, motivate, make people laugh. I called it the San Diego Speaking System, which despite people telling me it was a stupid name, I was proud of, because that's where I grew up. That's where I learned everything. That's where I started my journey. I put up hours of video, over a dozen PDFs. It was a masterclass in everything that I knew how to do. And I launched it in March 2020. And 2 weeks later, the pandemic hits, and my program, which showed people how to speak at the front of the room to groups of people, now suffered from the fact that there were no longer fronts of rooms or groups of people. I made $300. But despite that business setback, something was happening to my mind during the pandemic. Everybody was upset and suffering and scared and unsure about the future, but I'd already been in this space for 2 years. From where I sat, the water was warm. And just like that, my anxiety lifted. My depression cleared. The pandemic was the great equalizer for me. For 2 years, I had felt like I was behind everybody else. Everybody was working and succeeding and thriving, or at least not suffering like I had been. But now we were all in the same boat. No more depression, no more anxiety. But try as I might, I couldn't seem to shake that pesky ADHD. And for the first time in my life, yes, the first time in my life, I felt like a real artist. I never used that moniker for myself because I felt that it was pretentious for me. I'm not supposed to call myself an artist. Other people are supposed to call me an artist. But the doubts and fears and struggles and crippling, paralyzing, antisocial behaviors were explained. Not only is this what people with ADHD suffer with on a daily basis, it's also what artists suffer with on a daily basis. I felt better. And then I got a small windfall of cash when the timeshare company that I worked for was slapped with a $9 million court-mandated punishment for being fraudulent to the public, and they ended up selling their entire operation to Hyatt. And I was given the option of cashing out my stock shares, which I normally couldn't touch until I was 59 and a half. Though that was over 5 years away, that seemed like an eternity. So I took the money. And what did my impulsive, childish ADHD brain decide was the best thing to do with that money? I bought a trike. Because I loved the Fonz growing up. But I didn't want to tip over on a two-wheeler. Midlife crisis, ADHD, I don't care. You be the judge. I was cool. And then after Mary Beth, the mom, and Roger the mouse, Scotty died. He was somebody that I used to work with and that everybody liked, but he didn't believe in vaccinations and he died of COVID. And as angry as I was at him for that, I felt that I really should go to the memorial service, which, as it happened, was also held at the timeshare resort on the golf course in the exact same location where 4 people showed up years earlier when Mary Beth died. I decided to go on my trike with a leather jacket. Hey. When they saw me drive up on my helmet, I thought they'd wonder, who is that? And I'd take off my helmet and shake my hair, and they'd say, oh my God, it's Ruben. What happened to him? He's changed. Look how cool he is. He's doing great. But there was nobody in the parking lot. Nobody saw me drive up. I waited and soon had to give up because the service was starting. So nobody saw the trike, but they saw me walk in with a leather jacket. When the opportunity was given for anybody to say a few words about Scotty, something in my mind clicked, and I said, watch this. And I walked up, and I told the story of Mary Beth, and how angry I was, and how much I liked Scotty. And I just winged it. I know how to do this. The evening of bad ideas was my rehearsal. When I was finished, people had tears in their eyes. People touched my hand as I walked to the back of the courtyard. People told me how great it was to see me, how I was missed. And then I left, riding off into the sunset on my white Can-Am Spider, the invisible Fonzarelli. And then 2 weeks later, The phone rang. It was Hyatt. They saw what I did. They had new bosses, and they wanted me back. No mandated script. I could do whatever I want. No lies. I could tell the truth. And I said, I will never go back to you unless I get this and this and this. And they gave it to me. And now I'm back. I'm the group presenter at Hyatt Vacation Club, where I'm doing well so far. I'm making money. And when Yuri saw me return, he said, you owe me a steak dinner. I am an artist. I have ADHD. I am a group presenter for a timeshare company. And those things are not mutually exclusive. And nobody knows this but you. But as I speak, Roger's mummified body is still blocking the camera.